Two men from Texas spot something unusual at the Hawaiian beach that prompts expert intervention. We all have been to some vacations in some part of our lives. We forget about everything the moment we set our foot in the place where we know we don't have to worry about anything. And Hawaii is such a place which has some beautiful, unique, and amazing beaches. But this story here isn't about Hawaiian beaches, but about the discovery which was made by those two men who left their hectic schedule behind in Texas to enjoy the beautiful sunsets on Hawaii beaches. Little did they know their simple vacation would turn into the most amazing adventure that would change their life forever. The discovery stayed hidden for more than 400 years, only to get exposed by these two men accidentally. What was the discovery? You'll soon find out. Hawaii became the state of the United States in August 1959. Being a part of the American territory is the only state of North America that is located in Oceania, which is the northernmost island group in Polynesia. Hawaii's state is a group of islands called Ni'iwa, Kauai, Oahu, Molokai, Lanai, Kaho'olawe, Maui, and Hawaii. Hawaii is the most popular island of all, where just last year 9.3 million visited the island. But the most interesting part is that none of them saw what these two men spotted that day. Honolulu is the capital city of Hawaii, and currently around 1 million people live in the city. It is the natural scenery which makes it one of the most sought places in the world. The atmosphere, the huge numbers of beautiful beaches, and of course, active volcanoes make this place a perfect tourist spot. And the culture from America, East Asian, and Hawaiian make it the multicultural state. Hawaii was named after Hawaiiloa, a legendary famous navigator and fisherman. It was he who discovered the islands in 300 AD, even before colonial America was instituted. According to the archaeological studies, during the 11th century, immigrants from Raiatea and Bora Bora were the first to step on the islands, much before then the English diverted towards North America. Some historians say that because of the constant arrival of immigrants and people who came from Tahiti around 1000 AD, the culture and native of the islands saw a major change in everything. The Tahiti people introduced the kapu system. It is the ancient legal system and code of conduct of the Hawaiian people. They also built several huge structures of heiaus, the famous Hawaiian temples. In 1778, Captain James Cook, a famous British explorer, stepped foot on the islands. He documented his whole trip. There are some scientists who believe that before Cook arrived on the islands, Spanish explorers already explored the islands some 200 years before him, but there is no proof of that. The only thing matters now were this astonishing discovery that changed everything about the past of the world. The Chinese arrived in the same year as the English explorers, and throughout the 19th century, the Japanese also entered the islands. This is the reason behind the dominant Asian culture in this part of the island in the people rather than the European and native Indian culture. In fact, the majority of the population is recognized as Asian. Now, let's move to the island where this discovery was made. Oahuaka, the gathering place, is the third largest island of Hawaii. Almost 1 million people reside here on this beautiful and mysterious island. There are two volcanoes in Oahu, the Waianae and Carlisle ranges that shields the islands. And without a doubt, these are the places you must visit once in your life. Tourists can enjoy the sight of beautiful volcanoes, but historians can learn some interesting things about Hawaiian history. The history which was hidden for 400 years was now out in front of the world. According to archaeological evidence, the first population that settled here around 300 AD arrived from the island Bora Bora, who then established the kingdom of Oahu. They are believed to be the most ancient rulers in the history of Hawaiian. But recently, two tourists discovered a hidden secret from the Oahu age which changed the path of the history of the island. What's the secret? You'll find out soon. Mark Louviere and Lonnie wanted to leave Texas for a few days so that they could enjoy some quality time. We all need a vacation. When we decide a place that we wish to explore, we start preparing for it from a few months back. Mark and Lonnie loved Hawaii. They knew what a beautiful place it is, and when they got a chance, they didn't leave the opportunity, and the next moment they were on a plane to Hawaii. Though they had been in Hawaii before, this time they wanted to explore the islands which they missed last time. You can imagine the craze about this place which made them visit it again. There is so much to do there that one vacation isn't enough to completely explore the place to the fullest. Excited about the vacation, they made sure that they don't miss out any fun. But who could have thought that there was a reason behind the Hawaiian calling? It was in 2016, Mark and Lonnie decided to take a break from their hectic schedule in Hawaii. They have already been there before, so they knew a lot about the place and places they can visit for some leisure time. But rather than staying in some lavish area, they decided to stay in the town of Waianae, at Oahu's west coast. They chose the Polynesian area because of the lovely weather in the town, clear and fresh waters from the beaches, and the island's unique culture. Last time they missed this town when they were here in Hawaii. So, when they planned their next vacation, it was again Hawaii, but this time they chose a different place that would make their trip more memorable. But little did they know that after this astonishing discovery, they would soon become the island's history. For both Mike and Lonnie, it was the first time they have visited Oahu. So, both men were looking forward to exploring the place and make the most out of the trip. They wanted to visit as many famous spots on the island as possible. One day, during the course of their vacation, they were enjoying the sunset at the beach when they spotted something at the beach. Confused and intrigued, they moved closer to it. The sun was going down when suddenly a ray of light changed their destiny forever. Something unusual was there on the sand. Mike and Lonnie had no idea what they were looking at, but it was something they haven't seen in their entire life. They moved closer to the shore where the water had just revealed something to them. Everything stopped for a moment. Two strangers from different parts of the world were standing and staring at their destiny, which was about to change very soon. Mike and Lonnie captured a few of the images of the discovery they have just made on the sea just before sunset. They were feeling lucky because if they would pass the same spot some 10 or 15 minutes later, they wouldn't have been able to see it because of the sunset. But eventually, it was their destiny to find the most amazing discovery of the century. Mike and Lonnie were again on the same spot where they discovered something on the sand. Waiting for the waters to clear the area, they waited for some time. After a while, they were staring at the same petroglyph which was carved into some rocks. The rocks were located next to the coastline. The sight was just beautiful, as Mike and Lonnie haven't seen anything like that ever in their whole life. But what was the meaning of all this? They were no expert, but they wanted to know more about the discovery. Both men realized how lucky they were that this amazing discovery was made by them. They were there at the right time in the right place. It was their destiny to spot those ancient carvings when every day several of tourists passed the same spot as them, but no one else spotted it except these two. So, what was the discovery? What does it mean? They wanted to know. After the discovery was made public, many tourists and local people were stunned to know that had never seen these strange figures before. Even the regular visitors at the beach or the local people who worked in the area never saw these figures. Mike and Lonnie said to Hawaiian Station, it was just a stroke of luck. But what was this discovery all about? What did these carvings mean? Both men looked closely at the carvings and they found there were more than 10 human figures carved in stones which were more than 5 feet each. They informed the local authorities about the discovery, as they were no expert about such. Though they knew that these figures mean something, but they had to know more about it, and only experts could tell what they were. These figures are very unique all around the globe, and most of them could be spotted in the islands in eastern Polynesia. Until the full investigation wasn't done, nobody could tell what these figures meant, and who made them and when. The experts were called to take a look at the figures, and then they told an unbelievable story about the past of Hawaii and who made them. Rather than making a hype about the discovery, Mike and Lonnie were smart enough to inform about it to the local authorities, because tourists don't act in such a way where they call up the authorities. However, there have been instances where tourists have damaged such archaeological sites by touching them, walking on them, or stealing some parts of it to keep them as souvenirs. Luckily, both men did the right thing in the end. Cases where archaeological discoveries are involved, there are certain protocols that authorities have to follow before they can tell something concrete about the project. First, the State Historic Preservation Division inspect the area, and it's their decision to conclude if the site is even an archaeological site or a fake. And because of that, every country has an official State Historic Preservation Division for such cases. The State Historic Preservation Division in the U.S. Army was on the site at Waianae, where they worked together to explore the discovery to the fullest, and they concluded that, yes, this was indeed an archaeological site with not 10 but with more than 17 petroglyphs. You just can't ignore the fact that nobody before Mike and Lonnie spotted them because there might be a possibility they had already seen them, but didn't care to inform the authorities. Some archaeological sites are found meters and meters under the sea, but these petroglyphs were at the shoreline, and amazingly, the majority of them were in a very good state. It's not every day the archaeologists make such discovery that gives them more insight about the past. Surely, this discovery would take them a little closer to Hawaiian history. The U.S. Army archaeologist Alton Xabe and local resident of Waianae both were sure that this was certainly a unique case in the world, because usually, petroglyphs are well conserved in the areas they are spotted. And during the span of the investigation, other archaeologists said the same thing. And soon, the eastern coast of Waianae became a center of archaeological research. Alton Xabe declared that he did see these petroglyphs when he was a little boy and when he read about Hawaii's history and about the first settlers of the islands. He got so intrigued by it that history became his passion, which he then took to the next level, and soon he became the most famous archaeologist. And this discovery changed his life's course. When Xabe was small, he heard many myths about these figures which were hidden around the islands, and little did he know that some years later he would be the one to investigate them. Talk about luck. Maybe it was those fascinating stories which made him pursue archaeology. He said there was a time when he thought that it was all just a lie, but the destiny and history proved him wrong. Xabe and his research team told that the petroglyphs that were found were 4 centuries old. And if we think about it, the Europeans arrived on the island during the second half of the 18th century, meaning that the petroglyphs were carved 150 years ago before Captain James Cook set foot here. This discovery gave fascinating new information about Hawaiian culture and history. The experts knew these figures were made before the European colonization, and many Hawaii's historical sites are before colonization happened in Hawaii. More than us, the discovery is important for the local people who have been living in these parts for years. Such discoveries tell more about their history and culture to the people who are part of this history. For them, these aren't just archaeological discoveries, but answers about their past. It was personal for them. It's important for people to understand and learn about their lineage, because that way we can feel closer to our ancestors. Luckily, there are many historians and other experts who have been able to trace back people's family's tree, which has led to deciphering documents from the past. According to Glenn Keela, a local resident of Oahu, it is very likely that this discovery will allow the island's inhabitants to learn about their descent. He also thinks that this new discovery should be deciphered as soon as possible, as it would shed more light on the genealogy and religion of the Waianae tribes. The petroglyphs of Waianae were not the only ever discovered on the islands. In fact, covering all the parts of Hawaii, it is believed that there are over 200 such sites where some petroglyphs have been found in other South Pacific islands. But if you want to live the Hawaiian history, then the Puako Petroglyph Archaeological Preserve in Kailua Kona is the place you should take a tour to. At the Puako Petroglyph Archaeological Preserve, you'll be able to see 1,200 petroglyphs. However, there are some parts in the park that are off limits to tourists, and if we consider those areas too, then there are around 3,000 carvings all over the place. Experts have found carvings of paddlers, sails, marchers, dancers, family groups, deity symbols, and animals such as dogs, chickens, and turtles. And if you really want to immerse yourself in Hawaiian history and culture, then you should visit the Waikoloa Petroglyph Field near the Puako. The carvings here at this site looks more like a graffiti. Here you can see some clear figures of humans, birds, and canoes. This place is an important link to Hawaii's history. At this site, there are figures of a horse and a warrior that tells the experts that in the past the contact between the European explorers and native people was true. Though the discovery made by these two men wasn't as ancient as the carvings that could be seen here in these two preserves, still this discovery was an important one and unique. According to Xabe, the petroglyphs found in Waianae are not only unique but special as they're located on the shoreline, and also these figures are carved out on the rock. These petroglyphs weren't like other figures where they have figures related to animals or birds, but here these figures were of hands and figures which are not found anywhere at Hawaii's archaeological sites. Other petroglyphs around Hawaii are just foot tall, but these new figures discovered by two men from Texas are more than 5 feet tall. Now, it was all up to archaeologists to decipher the secret behind these 400-year-old carvings. And fortunately, there were other problems too which archaeologists had to face. It's very important to tell the authorities about such discoveries, and more importantly, one should not damage them at any cost. We never know how delicate these discoveries could be as they are very old. You should avoid touching them and try to preserve them. And in case of petroglyphs, they can easily be damaged when you touch them, as the upper part could wear off just like that. Aware of this problem, Ixabe said during the television interview that it's very important that the local authorities preserve the area, and until the area isn't protected, no human should be allowed. If we don't keep these measures, then the tourists will enter the site and probably would ignore the rules and regulations, which as a result could destroy them. If you think there are no other problems except the human interference, then you are wrong. The US Army can handle human, but what they can't handle was the forces of nature. When Mike and Lonnie spotted the carvings, which were covered with water from the sea, they didn't know that in a few days the carvings would just disappear once again. So, the carvings disappeared again beneath the sand, confusing every expert on the site. A day before yesterday, the carvings were right there in front of them, and now they were all gone. And the main problem was that nobody knew when they are gonna spot the carvings again. The investigation came to a halt. Too many questions were left unanswered, so the team of experts waited for the carvings to reveal themselves once again. The site was protected and nobody was allowed to enter it. It was guarded with US Army. You don't mess with the Army. You just obey what they say. You can imagine the seriousness and importance of the discovery now. The experts were ready to wait, as it was worth waiting. Archaeologists found out the reason why no one was able to spot the carvings before. The carvings were covered with a thick layer of sand, and that's why nobody was able to spot them, and it was a lucky day for Mike and Lonnie, as they were there in the right place at the right time. The sea revealed the carvings when it took the sand away with it. The archaeologists made sure that nobody enters the site, as they were afraid that when now the carvings have disappeared again, the tourists might walk on them by mistake, which could destroy the carvings for good. So, they asked the tourists to stay away from the spot or walk around it. The archaeologists didn't know when they would see the carvings again. Ixabe and his team did warn the people to not remove the sand of the area, and the people were cooperative because they could see the seriousness of the discovery. The local people helped the authorities by telling the tourists on their level that they should avoid that spot. All they could do now was to wait. The team didn't want to destroy the carvings at any cost, and all they had to do was to have a little patience before the carvings revealed themselves again. The administrator of SHPD, Alan Downer, has stated that for now, they have no control over the carvings, as it was almost impossible to tell when they are going to reveal themselves again, so they were waiting for that day to come. But meanwhile, they were trying to teach people about the importance of such findings and why they should protect the area. This discovery is an important part of Hawaii's culture, said Alan Downer. It's very important to understand the significance of petroglyphs, as they are the missing links of Hawaii's history. They shed some new light about the Hawaiian culture and history, which not only helps the archaeologists to study the past in detail, but also brings the local people near to their lost history. Just like the ones found in Waianae, there are several other discoveries waiting to get discovered. Until the carvings don't show them back again, there are still dozens of questions that need answers. Why were these carvings so huge? Who drew them, and for what purpose near the coastline? We hope that they find answers really soon. But what about Mike and Lonnie? One accident at the beach changed Mike's and Lonnie's lives forever. They were really happy to realize that it was they who made the discovery. Indeed, they would always remember their most amazing vacation all their lives. Wouldn't it just be amazing if it would be them again spotting the carvings when they reveal themselves again?